to the Social Show live with Viwe Tyolwana, only on brandlive.co.za.
Welcome, everybody, to the Social Show, your one-stop shop for all things CSI and CSR. I know you're excited about the show, as I am. It's been amazing Freedom Day. We just had our Freedom Day yesterday, and I really wonder what you did and if you even thought about the freedoms that you have or you feel like you don't have. I think it's a very beautiful time that we can actually speak and react and really talk about the things that are troubling us, and instead of being angry about them and having them sort of lash out in different ways in our daily lives. So I am so excited and so interested in finding out what Freedom Day meant to you. I know it sounds like a cliche question, but we'll get into it a little bit more later on the show. But as usual, I am going to start off the day with the news. The Zip Zap Circus, the non-profit Zip Zap Circus, is currently celebrating its 25th year with a series of special monthly shows to showcase their talented students. Wow, okay. So co-founder Brett van Rensbeck has spoken about how the school had started off with just 15 students and now is incorporating over 1,400 students in different programs, including advanced classes with all the teachers, trainers, and former Zip Zap students themselves. Now, if you want to get involved, you can book your ticket at Quicket at 110 per person, free for children under 4, of course. And exceptionally, you're going to get exceptionally reasonable prices in terms of food, as you get like $15 for a hot dog, and even more so when you realize how amazing the circus will be. Now, you can also follow Zip Zap Circus on social media for updates. Do not miss out on the Zip Zap Circus. And in other news, this year, the CEO Sleep Out will be the CEO Sleep Out, with only women leaders spending the night on the lawns on the Union buildings in Pretoria. The venue for this year, which the event is going to be taking place on the 22nd of June. Now, this signals a new chapter in the CEO Sleep Out brand that is also a world first. The venue is also fitting, as this is where historic women obviously marched a while ago against the apartheid regime. CEO brand ambassador Leanne Manna says that this is an opportunity for female leaders to showcase themselves, as well as for male leaders to nominate female leaders to participate. Also launched with this new CEO concept. The main focus is this year is for shelter for children. So instead of the shelter for the homeless, they're also looking at children who are homeless, rather. So the primary beneficiary will be Door of Hope, announced by Luke Lampritt, a child development and protection consultant with over 25 years in the field. So Door of Hope will be the selected beneficiary for the CER Sleep Out for this year, and you can look forward to that. And lastly, to celebrate, or rather to have celebrated World Book Day, Nali Bali Story powered schools team addressed the literacy rights of rural children through a series of community dialogues aimed at informing adults and educators of the literacy rights of their children. Now, working to address these issues and empower adults and educators where they are. 60 story powered school staff members joined by over 1,200 volunteers led collective discussions on children's literacy rights with schools communities identified by the Department of Education as most in need of education interventions. Now, these schools were located in the districts of Ugu and Utukela in KwaZulu-Natal and Bizana and Maluti in the Eastern Cape. So if you really want to find out a little bit more about that, you can go to their website and their Mobi site to find out how the charter highlights, a range of literacy experiences with children and how the dialogues had gone, how they gone. Okay, that is the end of my news. Thank you.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
You know, yesterday a lot of people asked me the same question over and over, and I just thought, do people actually think about what they're actually looking for when they ask this question? And the question that people have been asking me, and these are friends, these are colleagues, these are people that just know me from like school and all that kind of stuff. They just wanted to know, are you free? Viwe, do you feel free? And is there something to celebrate? And my answer hasn't changed. I think in the last 2 years, I still feel like I still have the same answer, and that scares me a little bit because I feel as though, the answer should kind of change looking at the space that we're in. The answer should change in the way that we're seeing progress in our government, in our programs for children, in our programs for inclusiveness and togetherness and the big transformation gap that needs to be closed. So the answers should change looking at the progress that we've seen or felt. But I mean, for years, I've been answering the same way. And I kind of realized that when I was giving sort of this regurgitated answer to everybody, and I was saying, I don't know when I will feel free because I don't know what freedom is. So in the sense of, what are we trying to feel? How does that freedom feel? And how would we recognize it once it happened? How would we recognize it? Would it be an economic freedom, and would it be your own individual economic freedom? So would it be from your own perspective in that sense? Or would it be you seeing a change in shanty towns, in change in people living in really horrible places, in how people experience poverty? What does freedom look like? So would we be able to actually say that's the freedom that I was speaking about? And would we be able to recognize it? And I think that's my biggest issue, is that I don't know what it is that I'm actually looking to feel. Is it personal, or is it a more consciously thinking about how people engage and feel, and how the poor are supported, and that gap, how that gap from poor to rich in South Africa will minimize? Is it a land issue? Is it a racial issue? So what is the freedom that you talk about look like? Don't forget to tell me on my, just tweet me and tell me what is it that would make you feel free? Not that you'd actually know what that feeling would be like, but what is it that you would say, okay, I think we're on the right track. Don't forget to go to Viwe for Real, or you can find me on brandlive.co.za. Just tweet me and tell me what it feels like. So that is actually my answer. Usually when people ask me that question, it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm selfish about my freedom. I don't know if I'm just looking at my own situation, although my own situation as a black female in South Africa is, uniform with a lot of black females in South Africa as well. So how I see, how I sort of change my perspective may be something that happens in this kind of woman in my same age group and that kind of thing. But would that suffice to say it's freedom, because it's women who may not have experienced what I experienced? So there's so many issues around it. But before I get into what we actually want to know, which is, are we free? I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of Freedom Day and why it's celebrated in South Africa. So, obviously, 27th of April commemorates the day in 1994 when the first democratic election was held in South Africa. And yesterday, obviously, celebrated Freedom Day to mark the liberation of this country and its people from a long period of colonialism and minority domination. So, are we clear as to what it is we're saying we want to be free from? It is obviously, first of all, it's a celebration of the fact that we are no longer under apartheid, which is amazing. But now we have to transcend that conversation as to say, what is still holding us back? And I think that's the biggest issue, is the fact that we really can't pinpoint what it is that's holding us back, because there's so many things, right? There's so many things. So, apartheid obviously officially began in South Africa in 1948, but colonialism and oppression of the African majority has plagued South Africa since 1652. After decades of resistance, stalemate between the liberation movement and the apartheid rather apartheid government was reached in 1988. The ANC, South African Communist Party, which is the SACP, and the Pan African Congress PAC and other organizations were later unbanned on the 2nd of February 1990, and a non-racial constitution was eventually agreed upon and adopted in 1993. And on the 27th of April 1994, the nation finally cast its vote in the first democratic election in the country. The ANC was then voted into power, and Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the president of South Africa on the 10th of May. Now, it is important to note that freedom should not necessarily mean, or does not mean, emancipation from poverty, unemployment, racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination, right? And I think that's where the issue comes from, is the fact that once you think you're free, we sort of correlated with emancipation. We correlated with those kinds of issues. We are 15 years into our new democracy, obviously, and many of these issues are still rife in our country, and we are still a long way away from solving the legacies of the apartheid government. And now we face new challenges like growing inequality among South Africans and political and economic instability in the region caused by the new elite who are interested in pursuing their own interests. And Freedom Day therefore serves as a reminder to us that the guarantee of our freedom requires us to remain permanently vigilant against corruption and erosion of the values of the freedom struggle, and to build an active citizenry that will work towards wiping out a legacy of racism, inequality, and the promotion of rights embodied in our constitution. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was trying to say in the beginning of the show, is that we mustn't confuse freedom and the emancipation of apartheid legacies and the conventions and the kinds of things, the ripple effect that apartheid really had in South Africa. And I think also we're quite rushing it. I feel like we're rushing it a lot because we remember, like, I think apartheid was a uniquely South African thing. So the issues around apartheid, as much as we have common issues with other countries that were colonized and other countries that were, oppressed by British or American, or whatever the case may be, rule, we are still, for the large part, fighting a very unique battle, and a battle that is not only racial but has so many other ramifications as to how people understood what rightfully belonged to them. So concepts of privilege, concepts of normalizing discrimination against people in a very individual way are issues that we have, and those issues need a similarly unique answer. And I think we're trying to put a lid on something that necessarily have a lid. It has dimensions that need to be closed off, but it's quite unique to South Africa. So that's the first problem. I also know that the Apartheid Museum held a very beautiful debate, or rather like a speak or round table yesterday on non-racialism being one of the biggest issues around Freedom Day and those kinds of things that we're talking about in 2017. Can we have a non-racial country? Can we have a language that is non-racial? And does it affect, or does it perpetuate race, or does it help us understand it and not speak about it like it didn't happen? I know there was so many beautiful speakers. Eusebius Makaza was actually chairing it, but it was Chil Mbembe was there, and a lot of beautiful people who spoke about where we are. And what I love about the dialogues at Apartheid Museum is that not only is Apartheid Museum such an historical space in its own right, and if you haven't gone, you are missing out. It has so many beautiful work of art and just, it's just beautiful. And even being there, you feel the spirit of those who really fought against apartheid. But besides that, I really love the dialogues that they're having, because I'm seeing more and more young people involved in these conversations. I'm seeing more young people involved in panel discussions, so that introduction of young people. However, I would really like to see this kind of dialogue, these kind of conversations being really more mainstream and finding that instead of a normal show on 702 on a really peak hour moment, like even if it's like a Monday to, okay, not 702, maybe let me say 94.7, or you have them sort of really getting into the apartheid museum and these dialogues and airing them out to people so that they can speak and they can hear and they can feel like they're part of this national conversation. And I think it's very difficult for us, and I think a lot of people are doing it. If you do listen to 702, I know UCBS is one of the people that I look at in terms of really trying to get the country involved and start thinking differently and starting engaging with their thoughts. Really, obviously, and all these amazing radio broadcasters. But I think, that specific conversation that was being had on Freedom Day was very important. Also, there were a few marches that took place yesterday on Freedom Day, as I said, which I think were really, really beautiful. I love the fact that we respond to how we feel and what we think about our government in such an active way. There was this I remember a while ago there was this sort of outburst that millennials, especially the younger generation, what they do is that they tweet their issues. They don't necessarily act on them. And for me, when I see so many marches and what people were doing in terms of like how they celebrated Freedom Day, people walking around, people really finding ways in which they can feel like active citizens. It really makes me feel like we're not too lost. The millennials aren't too lost. People are actually engaging not only on Twitter, on Facebook, or on Instagram. They actually are walking and feeling and understanding what it means to protest, what it means to stand up for your country, and what it means to stand up for what it is you believe your freedom means. I know in residents from various Cape Town communities marched from Keisergracht Street to Parliament on Thursday to express their frustration with violence in their areas. That's one of the issues that I think is very. I think also the marches are quite. They have personality. So people are marching for whatever it is that they feel they need. So in one aspect, it's economic freedom. In one aspect, it's violence. In one aspect, it's violence against women. And I think that is also something to look at as to how we're responding to the environment and how we are responding to the government that we are living in. Anyway, as I said, the various Cape Town communities marched on Thursday, and officials have handed a memorandum of demands over to the Office of Police Minister Fikile Mbalula and are demanding a response within 3 days. Around 200 Cape Town residents participated in the It Ain't Gangster to Kill Your Own march. Disgruntled residents from Lavender Hill, Massacre, Mitchell's Plain and other communities believe government must place more emphasis on the eradication of gang-related activities from communities. Manenberg Safety Forum chairperson Ruchashanda Pasco has stressed the importance of authorities collaborating efforts to address the issue. And residents were just saying, our children can't walk freely. They're shot while they're walking from schools. Where is the freedom in that? And that's a very valid point. When was the last time you really saw a really a mass program that really want to eradicate gangsterism? I feel like gangsterism is so embedded in the government itself that they can't even recognize that it's an issue in communities. So I think a lot of communities, especially in Cape Town, a lot of people are dying, and that's not necessarily being in the radar because it's violence, and obviously there's not much people can do about it, but there's so much they can do about it. And I love that march. I love the fact that they stood up for what it was they knew needed to leave or be eradicated from their own communities. So that's one of the marches, which I think is very important to stress and speak about. Gangsterism, it's a big issue in South Africa. It's a big issue, especially in Johannesburg as well. I hear stories of people getting mugging, hijacked almost every single day. I know it's some of it is like the same cars, the same people. People are even recognizing who these people are, but they can't go to the police. So I love that was something that they did, and they sent the memorandum to Fikile Mbalula, who, by the way, I am really rooting for. I'm really rooting for him because I do think that his visibility, his power, and his voice is being heard. And I don't know how it's gonna pan out later, but I do think that that's a really good thing for the Minister of Police. The Minister of Police needs to be as transparent as possible, needs to be accessible as possible, and people must feel like they can communicate with him personally. And I think he's doing a great job in that. Another really big issue that was raised yesterday that I heard also in hushed tones is, should white people celebrate Freedom Day? You know, not in the sense of should they not feel like they're free or not, you know, I'm not saying that white people can't celebrate it, but should they celebrate it, and how should they celebrate it? And it's so crazy that people are now thinking about those kinds of things. I mean, white people have a meaningful voice, I think, a voice that needs to be heard in freedom discourse. However, it's a supporting voice. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, and I'm saying this not necessarily on behalf of anybody, but in my opinion, it's a supporting voice. It isn't necessarily a lead the conversation voice. It's a voice that says, I hear you and I understand and I'm supporting you. And I think that's where it all should boil down to. The question of whether or not, and I saw this on News 24, where they wrote, you know, and I think it was an opinion piece by Mondli Zondo, and he said, should white people, celebrate Freedom Day? And I think they should. I think it's very important that they understand as to what we are fighting for, because Freedom Day not only it's not only a public holiday that allows you to celebrate your freedoms, but it's also a public holiday that makes you realize where you stand in this country and how you got there, and why we are always marching, and why we are always trying to change laws, why we are always trying to eradicate poverty and to really make sure that our freedoms are understood and pretty much supported. So that was a big issue. But anyway, thank you so much for listening today. The show has been interesting for me, even just in terms of my thought processes, in terms of how I'm thinking about stuff. I really hope you have a beautiful weekend, and cheerio. Yeah.
Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.